Shalom. I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahabashai, Bahashem, Rakah Kwadash. I want to give double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone, because those are the men who I learned this truth from through the spirit and power of Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahabashai. Yahweh is the true name of the God of Israel. Yahabashai is who the world ignorantly calls Jesus Christ, but his one and only true name is Yahabashai. And pretty much this video is going to show you that the Edomites is the so-called white man in Zebulon, and that they're in rulership according to the Bible. All right, they have control over all countries through their centralized system. They control the United Nations. They control absolutely everything. And anytime you have a world war, they just gain more power over nations. All right. So when you read scriptures like the hour of temptation is going to come upon the whole world, well, the way how it's going to come upon the whole world is because you have one particular nation, which is the Edomites, right, through the Zionist regime. They control all nations' money supply through the central bank. All right. So that's how the hour of temptation is going to come upon the whole world, because all countries is under their system. And this is what the scriptures refer to. Now, let me show you. Let me read this quick precept. 2 Ezra 6 and 9. Because you have to understand, we're in the time of the Gentiles, meaning that pursuant to Daniel, the 2nd chapter, there was particular heathen nations that were set up to rule before Yahabashai makes his return. And when Yahabashai makes his return, we will be in the second beast, which is the revived Roman Empire in the form of America as well as the EU. All right. That's why you have particular things that went on, like the Treaty of Rome. That's why there's so many different similarities between Greece, Rome, and America, as well as the European Union. Why? Because it's the same nation, aka we in the time of the Gentiles, that's ruling, which would be the Edomites. All right? So you got to understand these things when you read in the scriptures. That's how you measure the time diligently. So the Edomites is the so-called white man in Zebulon, because when you read in the scriptures, your nationality, the culture you're supposed to follow is supposed to be based off of the seed of your father. When you read scriptures like Numbers, the 18th chapter, concerning the Levitical priesthood, you know, what will qualify you to be a priest? You have to be a descendant of Levi, but really the sons of Aaron. All right? So if you ain't come from that seed line to have a record of your fathers, you know, the priesthood would be polluted. You would be put away from the priesthood when you read Ezra, the 2nd chapter. All right? Even genealogy, the genealogy of Yahabashai, when you read Matthew, the 1st chapter, who the world ignorantly calls Jesus Christ, it names men for his genealogy. Why? Because when you read Numbers 1 and 18, your pedigree, meaning your descent, you know, your descendancy, your ancestry, your lineage, your genealogy, a record of your descent is based off of what? The seed of your father. The word seed, going back to the Greek word sperma, which means seed. So every human being that you see on the planet Earth comes from a man's seed. All right? So you got to understand these things. So when Yahabashai returns back, the Edomites will be in rulership. That's what the war in heaven is about. All right? All these nations under the authority of Esau-Edom teaming up to fight who the world ignorantly calls Jesus Christ, which his true name is Yahabashai, in which they're going to say it's an alien invasion, but really it's just the return of Yahabashai coming back with power and great glory to deliver the elect of the nation of Israel. All right? So when you read in the scriptures real briefly, right, the Most High, he calls them red in the Bible. He don't call them white. Look at the background. The background is white. They're different shades of red, right? Pink. So as you can see here, other names used for Esau-Edom, Idumea, Idumeans, red dragon. The dragon always refers to the ancient Roman Empire. right? Which is the first beast. You know, their symbol is the eagle. Going back to Mount Seir, the Mount Seir had the eagle as well. The wicked, pursuant to Malachi 1-4, Rome/Grecians, depending on the context of the scripture. The beast, which represents NATO and the EU, and they're also known as what? The serpent/the devil. All right? 2nd Ezra 6-9, for Esau is the end of the world. All right? The word end, going back to the Greek word aeon, which means what? At the end of this present age, the Edomites will be the last heathen nation to rule when Yahushua returns back and before the kingdom of heaven is established. The Edomites would be the so-called white man in sea line. They would be in rulership. They're the last heathen nation to rule. Why? Because this is the time of the Gentiles. So the Gentile nations are ruling the planet Earth before the kingdom of heaven is set up forever. All right? So the Most High, he's a fair and balanced God to allow all nations to rule. It's just that the Israelites is going to rule forever under that new covenant through Yahweh and Yahushua. For Esau is the end of the world. And Jacob, representing the kingdom of heaven, right, through Yahushua. That's how we're going to inherit it, through Yahushua's blood and sacrifice. And Jacob is the beginning of it that followeth. So when the Edomites go down, what nation will rule? The Israelites, which is the seed line of the so-called Negroes, Hispanics, and Native American Indians. You got to say seed, right? Because you got tares, as the scripture say. You have heathen men that have sex with our women, and they produce, tares, right? They produce their offspring that has similar genetics to our people. But if your father is a heathen, then you're a heathen, all right? So now, check this out. I typed this in on Google, Esau ruling in the end times. Let's see what pops up. So this is the AI overview. It says, in end time prophecy, Esau representing Edom/Rome/modern Western civilization, hence you have the term westernization, is characterized as the final global system of power. It says, I can't pronounce that word. Let's get the correct pronunciation. 1 second.
Coercion. Coercion.
All right, coercion. It says, and technological control, often identified as the beast system, right? Because that's what all nations is under, a beast system, a centralized system, controlled by one particular nation, which is who? The seed line of Edom. The scriptures say the earth has been given into the hand of the wicked. They control everything. It don't matter what it is. See who owns it. See the origin of who owns what. It says, scripture predicts a final conflict where the house of Jacob shall be a fire. Well, I don't need to read that because that refers to the kingdom of heaven. I want to focus on right now. All right? So that's pretty much it. Okay. Okay, so that's it with that. So now, let's read this. This is 2 Thessalonians chapter 2 and verse 8. Because another lie that people believe is that, the Arabs is Esau, the Nabateans. The Nabateans is a Arab people. Those are the Edomites. No. We're going to get into that. 2 Thessalonians 2 and 8. And then shall that wicked be revealed. When you go into this word wicked, this is the word for wicked in 2 Thessalonians 2 and 8.
Strong's G 459. Animas. Animas.
Animas. And it says, of the Gentiles. All right. So the wicked is referring to is the Edomites. Let's get a quick precept. I got it down here. This is Malachi 1 and 4. It says that wicked, right? Malachi 1 and 4, whereas Edom saith, we are impoverished, but we will return and build the desolate places. Thus saith Yahweh of armies, they shall build, but I will throw down, and they shall call them, referring to the seed line of Edom, the nation of Edom, right? And they shall call them the border of wickedness. So they're known as the wicked. You read scriptures like Proverbs 16:4, it says that the Lord created the wicked for the day of evil. We're in those evil times. So it says, and the people, meaning the seed, the nation, the people against whom Yahweh have indignation forever. Whenever you see the word Lord in caps, it's the YHWH, which translates to Yahweh. All right? So the Lord has indignation, meaning righteous anger towards his nation forever, because how they had that perpetual hatred towards his chosen seed line, his chosen nation, which is the nation of Israel. All right? So now I can X that out. Let me go all the way back to the top. Be revealed. When you go into this Greek word apokalypto, right, for the word revealed, it says to uncover, lay open what has been veiled or covered up. What has been veiled or covered up? That all wars is banker wars, right? The true identity of the so-called white man, how he changed people's nationalities from their ancient names that's recorded in the scriptures, that's recorded in the Bible. How they have all these Bible movies, but they never play, their ancient biblical nationality, which would be the Edomites, all right? The world doesn't know that the reason why these so-called JEWSs own everything is because they're not the true descendants of Jacob, that they're actually Edomites, prophesied to rule in the revived Roman Empire, the second beast, all right? People don't know that the New World Order / 2030 agenda, that's their agenda. People don't know under this particular nation's authority, the mark of the beast is going to become mandatory through that centralized banking system. People are unaware of this. Hollywood, they control Hollywood. Why do you think people have to do blood sacrifices and worship Satan, which is the god of this world? Why do you think they have to do that? Because the Edomites control everything. They control the money supply. So if you could control the money supply, you could get people to sell out. You can have people that's hirelings, spies, agent provocateurs. You could get a man to forsake his own God because of the love of money and being in poverty, which they set that up. They cause global economic collapses, all right? They cause regime changes. They start proxy wars. They cause divide and conquer strategies, all right? Divide and conquer. This is what they do, all right? They finance the slave trades. They're the root to the problems of the planet Earth, and they will be punished in the kingdom of heaven, all right? These people, they're heathen. It says to disclose, make bare, meaning what? To expose them. You as a prophet, your job is to expose the Edomites, not be scared. And, we speak in code a lot of the times, but look, these devils, they took so many of my channels down, I'm sick of them, all right? You got to keep on exposing them. Yahweh said, occupy till I come. You got to keep on exposing them. Part of the gospel is to expose the Edomites, expose the Rothschilds, the Rockefellers, the different central banking families, how they hide their names.
His real name was Karl Heinrich Mordecai Marx. Father of Karl Marx was Herschel Mordecai, who was the son of Rabbi Mordecai Marx Levi, who was the son of Samuel ben Mordecai ha Levi, who was the son of Laius ben Mordecai, who in the 1400s, Laius Mordecai changed his name from Mordecai to Schwab. So the Schwab bloodline today is the bloodline of Karl Marx. But wait, there's more. Laius ben Mordecai Schwab was the son of Samuel Leopold Schwab II, who had changed his name from Guntberger to Schwab in the 1500s. And he was the son of Samuel Guntberger, who changed his name from Bauer to Guntberger. And the Bauer bloodline was originally named the Bacharachs during the time of Christ. The Bacharachs in 1501 changed their name to Bauer, and then 76 years later, in 1577, they changed their name to Rothschild. So they're all related.
Today's message is Shield of Edom. Everybody say Shield of Edom. Now, this is coming from actually the term Rothschild, and we're going to talk about that today. We've kind of been on a series after the Epstein files release on Epstein and the end times and the synagogue of Satan. And this is a continuation of that series where we'll be discussing these connections. In fact, if you don't know this, in the Epstein emails, Epstein wrote Peter Thiel, who is the founder of Palantir, the surveillance company that's going to play a major role here in these last days. And he said, as you probably know, I represent the Rothschilds. And that's a very key piece of information, because what that means is there is a hierarchy to this synagogue of Satan and to these group of people who are serving the devil here on earth and creating a vast network, right? How is the Antichrist going to obtain control of such a large portion of the earth? Well, there's a lot of groundwork that has to be done in advance. The surname Rothschild originates from German, meaning red shield. Now, most people know that, okay? Most people realize that the Rothschilds are Ashkenazis, they're German Jews, and that their last name means red shield. They've been around for a long time. They played a major role in the facilitation and founding of the current modern state of Israel, and we're going to talk about that today. But here's the part that people don't know, and we're going to make a lot of connections. So today's sermon is really going to cover not just the Rothschild family, but this long-term connection from Edom all the way to the Antichrist in the last days. And I want you guys to see these key connections. When it's translated into Hebrew, based on its etymological meaning, it corresponds to Magen Edom. Okay, what do I mean by that? The term Rothschild, that family name, means Magen Edom in Hebrew. Now, some people say it means red shield in Hebrew as well. Well, the problem with that is that the word for red and the word for Edom in Hebrew is the exact same word, okay? The exact same word. And so Magen Edom would be translated into English, shield of Edom, or the shield of the Edomites. And so the Rothschild family are the shield of the Edomites.
Continuing on with the biblical usage/definition, this is to make known, make manifest, disclose what before was unknown. So before, what was unknown was what? Their New World Order agenda, but ultimately how they are the descendants of Esau-Edom. And throughout the years, they tried to hide their identity by changing their names, all right? You'll be surprised on how many of these Edomites, actually are Rothschilds in disguise. So now, let's go down here. Let's go down here. Matter of fact, let's read this, right? Esau, Amalekites, Edom is the so-called Jewish people of today are biblically known as the nation of the Amalekites, who are the descendants of Amalek, the first grandson of Esau, which makes them the head tribe of the Edomites, as you can see here, all right? The Edomites, Caucasians, Europeans, Germans, Russians, so-called white people, as you can see, all right? Khazar/Ashkenaz, which there's no such thing as an Ashkenazi Jew, because that would be two sea lines, all right, two nations. Nations are established after the seed of that particular man. That's where the nation get its name from, all right? So when you read Genesis, the 10th chapter, Ashkenaz, he was a descendant of Japhet. And then we know to be a Jew, you have to be from the line of Judah, the tribe of Judah, right? So you can't be two nationalities in one body. That doesn't make sense. See? So it says Edomite, Amalekites, Jewish converts, Ashkenazi, Khazars. That's what they are. They're Khazars, right? It says, and they're the real synagogue of Satan. So now, let's go back. So this is 2 Thessalonians chapter 2 and verse 8, right? It says, and then shall that wicked be revealed, whom the Lord shall consume with the spirit of his mouth, which his mouth is his messengers, the prophets, going back to Luke chapter 1, verse 70, and shall destroy with the brightness of his coming, referring to Yahushua coming back with power and great glory by the chariots of the Most High, the so-called UFOs or UAPs. All right? So let's go more into it. So it says, right, then shall that wicked be revealed. So this is what I typed in on Google, right? I typed in Esau-Edom is not the Nabateans, because this is why people like to say, oh, the Arabs is Edomites, but they're not, because they're referring to the Nabateans. But hold up. This is the AI overview. It says that is correct based on historical and biblical accounts. While the Nabateans eventually occupied the territory previously held by the Edomites, Esau's descendants, they were distinct peoples. Distinct meaning different, right? It says here are the key distinctions between the two groups. It says origin of Edomites. The Edomites are the descendants of Esau, the twin brother of Jacob, and lived in the region of Mount Seir, which is south of Jordan. They were Semitic people closely related to the Israelites. Yeah, because we had the same common forefather, which would be Isaac, and then before him, it would be Abraham. But the seed of the promise is only the Israelites. It says, origin of Nabateans. The Nabateans were an Arab people, which the word Arab, it means mixed people, who migrated from the Arabian Peninsula into the region beginning in the 6th century BC. It says the overrun. By roughly 500 to 400 BC, the Nabateans conquered the territory of Edom, forcing the Edomites out of their land. So this is why people like to say, oh, well, the Nabateans, you know, that they're Edomites, because these Arab people, which were the Nabateans, they pushed the Edomites out of their land. All right. It says distant peoples. It says the Edomites did not become the Nabateans. All right. Rather, the Nabateans displaced them. Following this, many Edomites moved into southern Judea, a region that became known as Idumea. All right. So this lie or this origin of saying that, oh, the Arabs is the Edomites, this is where it comes from. The original Nabateans that pushed the Edomites out of their land between 500 to 400 BC. All right? And that links up with 2 Thessalonians 2 and 8. So that's it with that. All right? Now, let's get this, because there's a lot of information to bring out. This is Job chapter 9, verse 24. And see, these are particular scriptures you can't get around. There's no way to twist it unless you're just ignorant. Job 9:24. The earth, meaning the rulership of the planet Earth, the control of the planet Earth. The earth is given into the hand of the wicked. Who's the wicked? Pursuant to Malachi 1:4. It's the Edomites, the so-called white man in Zebulon. It says, he covereth the faces of the judges thereof. He did that during the Renaissance era, when he committed multiple crimes of iconoclasm, which is pouring acid on the dark-skinned Russian icon and Fresno paintings that prove that what? That the original Israelites, the Most High, the angels, the Messiah, that we were beings of color, all right? We had hue, we had color. So what they did to distort the images when they came into rulership, ultimately through Spain, because that's where the power came out of, they poured acid on the images, all right, to fit that narrative of them being a chosen people and being divine, and saying that the Most High, the angels, the Messiah, the ancient Israelites look like so-called white people, to fit that Jewish convert Ashkenazi Jew lie that they've been rolling with for years. All right. So it says thereof, because this is where you get this guy from. All right. This was a man that actually lived, Cesare Borgia, and the reason why his face was put up as the Messiah is so that his father could be worshipped as a god. Rodrigo Borgia. All right. So it says, if not, where and who is he? This is the only man to do this type of thing. All right. So now, let's go into that. The earth is given into the hand of the wicked. You want to make it in this world, you're going to have to worship Satan, which is the god of this world. You're going to be under these people, the Rothschilds, the royal family. As you can see here, they're not really royal. They just call themselves that. The Rockefellers that control the Board of Ed, which is all these school systems. They control Big Pharma. They control all the hospitals, right? The Zionists. You can't be a president or a world leader if you're not pro-Zionist, right? The Zionists, the Vatican, the Freemasons, world leaders, actors, singers, sports, stars, media, the public, everything is controlled. Everything is under their authority. They control the narrative by controlling the media stations, the news stations, the sports, the entertainment world, everything that makes an impact on people's minds to do righteous things or wicked things, or just to control people in general. They come up with these ideas for control, right? The earth is given into the hand of the wicked. As you can see here, some of these people died, but you have a title called Baron Rothschild, which a lot of people don't even understand or go into. Yeah, Jacob Rothschild, he died. Evelyn Rothschild died, but you're dealing with the title of Baron Rothschild, meaning the top Rothschild. So when a Rothschild died, their sons is the heir to all of their wealth. So Jacob Rothschild, he was the fourth Baron Rothschild, but then another Rothschild took over. That would be the fifth Baron Rothschild, which I'm going to go into it. All right? So these people, they control secret societies, as you can see here. All right? Got prosecutions up in there. See? The financial, World Bank, central banks, Federal Reserve, IMF, BIA, secret societies, Opus DEI, prosecutions, Freemasonry, Skull and Bones, Bohemian Club, political, CFR, the Trilateral Commission, government leaders, U.S. Supreme Court, Electoral College, NATO, EU and EEC, United Nations, Bilderberg Group, Club of Rome, intelligence agencies, MI5, CIA, FBI/NSA, KGB, Interpol, Mossad, drug cartels, Homeland Security, military intelligence, research institutions, meaning school systems, right? Institute for Policy Studies, Stanford Research Institute, Brooklyn Institute. It says Tavistock Institute, educational. The UNESCO. It says Lucis Trust, and plenty of others. All right. So you can't tell me that the earth ain't giving it to the hand of the wicked. That these people, they control absolutely everything and anything you can think of. Don't think you're gonna make it in society and you're not gonna pop up on their radar. All right. This is why, concerning their secret societies, they handpick people, meaning the people that's making the most noise that they can use to control people. They'll approach these people with invitations to these different secret societies. All right? So they control everything. The earth is given into the hand of the wicked. And obviously these people, they're the physical counterpart of Satan. All right? Let's go here. Because this New World Order agenda, this is their agenda, as you can see. See? They control absolutely everything you can think of. You can pause the screen, you can do your research, they control everything. All right? Let's look at some more stuff. This is something that I found on Google, right? It says every single aspect of the COVID agenda is Jewish. See? Gotta expose these people. 2 Thessalonians 2:8. I'm not making shit up. It says BlackRock and Vanguard are the two largest shareholders of both Pfizer and this particular company with this weird ass name. All right. See? Everything is according to their agendas because the earth is given in the hand of the wicked. It's the time of the Gentiles. Let's go to the next one. It says every single aspect of Black Rock is Jewish. All right, when they got that word Jewish like that, is talk about Edomites and their descendants, right? BlackRock is the world's largest asset manager with 9.42 trillion in assets under the management of June 30th, 2023. So it got to be worth more now. BlackRock operates globally with 70 offices in 30 countries and clients in 100 countries. All right, and these are the founders. Look how much they worth. They're all Jewish. I wonder why. Because the earth is given in the hand of the wicked. The Edomites, they the last heathen nation to rule. See? BlackRock is one of 3 largest management firms that own 88% of the S&P 500 companies. BlackRock manages more than 87 billion worth of shares in fossil fuel companies. It says Aladdin, a technology system developed by BlackRock, unifies the investment management process. As of 2020, Aladdin managed 21.6 trillion in assets. Top 15 companies of BlackRock. All right? You tell me these Edomites, they not in rulership? BlackRock promoting LGBTQ rights in Asia. Come on, man. These people are in absolute power. They the one that came up with this garbage. Anti-Semitism explained. I'm just going to read the last part. It says, the claw-like hands are clutching the earth. Going back to Job 9:24, referring to the conspiracy that the Jews control the global economy. They do. I showed you all the information. Everything go back to a Jewish name and Jewish people. Why? Because they're Edomites sticking together. Now, this individual died, but he was a Baron Rothschild. All right, so that means that when he dies, his son is going to control his wealth, as I'm going to show you. It says, hi, I'm Evelyn Rothschild. My family financed the Nazis. We were commissioned by the royal family to put down the American Revolution. We financed the communist revolution in Russia. We destroyed Palestine to create Israel. We were behind 9/11 and the resulting wars. We own the world's central banking system along with the Associated Press and Reuters, so we control all the news you read, view, and hear, and control your governments. We are the bankers for both the royal family and the Vatican. We are the New World Order. All right? Here's another Baron Rothschild that died. It says, hello there, my name is Jacob Rothschild. My family's worth $500 trillion, which they're worth more than that now. We own nearly every central bank in the world, which they do own every central bank in the world. We finance both sides of every war since Napoleon. We own your news, the media, your oil, and your government. You have probably never heard of me. All right? There you go. You got to expose these people, even consisting of slavery. It says, this is by this particular individual. I'm going to zoom in on it. It says, this is from a particular book, The Secret Relationship Between Blacks and Jews, Volume 1. It says the ships were not only owned by Jews, talking about the slave ships, referring to the transatlantic slave trade and all the slave trades. It says, but were manned by Jewish crews and sailed under the command of Jewish captains. See, I didn't know that. It says, from the same book, it says Jewish merchants played a major role in the slave trade. In fact, in all the American colonies, whether French, British, or Dutch, Jewish merchants frequently dominated. Okay? This is how they acquired their wealth. It says, in the slave trade, as many as 9 of 10 Africans were shipped to Brazil. Africans referring to Israelites, right? The Africans that they rounded up, it was actually Israelites. It wasn't Hamites. It's 2 different sea lines, 2 different cultures. It says, besides their important position in the sugar industry and in tax farming, they dominated the slave trade. The buyers who appeared at the auctions were almost always Jews. If it happened that the date of such an auction fell on a Jewish holiday, the auction had to be postponed. All right? Let's go to this last one. Look at this devil. It says the Jews of Suriname were also foremost in the suppression of the successive Negro revolts from 1690 to 1722. These, as a matter of fact, were largely directed against them as being the greatest slaveholders of the region. And this is from this particular book. All right? Look at this guy's face, man. God damn. All right, let's go to the next one. So you can see all this right here. They got like these 3 books, I guess, that expose everything. If you want to do your research on it, do edifying videos. See Jews selling blacks. Yeah, man. Yep. This is from this particular individual. The secret relationship between blacks and Jews, right? This individual, Dr. Abraham Peck of the American Jewish Archives. The first 2 centuries of the black-Jewish encounter in America were highlighted by a fairly extensive record of Jewish slaveholding. Indeed, during the colonial period in the small Jewish community of the time, almost every Jewish household of any form, north or south, possessed at least one slave. See this? It says, in fact, the cotton plantations in many parts of the South were wholly in the hands of Jews, and as a consequence, slavery found its advocates among them. That's from the Jewish Encyclopedia, 1901. All right, let's go to the next one. So I typed in the Board of Ed, which is controlled by the Rockefellers, aka the public school system in America, right, as well as worldwide. The Board of Ed was created to get you prepared for the workforce, right? A overview. It says the claim that boards of education and in the broader public school system were created to prepare people for the workforce is extensively supported, particularly regarding the rise of industrialization, vocational training, and the 20th century push for efficiency. All right. There you go. It says shocking list of 10 companies that profited from the slave trade. I'm not going to read all this. You can pause the screen and you can read it yourself. Let's get this precept. This is Psalm chapter 17 and 13. It says, arise, O Yahweh, disappoint them, cast them down, deliver my soul from the wicked, which is thy sword, from men which are thy hand, O Lord, from the men of the world, which have their portion in this life, and whose belly thou fillest with thy head treasure. They are full of children, and leave the rest of their substance to their babies. Now I'm going to go into that Baron Rothschild thing I was explaining. All right? But before I do that, you got to understand this. Because Evelyn Rothschild, he's dead. Jacob Rothschild is dead. Rothschilds do die, right? So what happens when a Rothschild dies? AI overview. When a prominent, and this links up with Psalm 17 and 14. It says, when a prominent member of the Rothschild family passes away, it is typically marked by private, high-profile memorial services, often attended by dignitaries such as King Charles III and Queen Camilla, attending Lord Jacob Rothschild 2024 service. The family, known for its extensive banking history dating back to the 18th century, manages succession through structured inheritance, with titles and assets passing to the next generation, such as the 5th Baron Rothschild, inheriting in 2024. So when a Rothschild dies, the next Baron Rothschild, meaning the top son, the firstborn, inherits the will of that dead Rothschild. So let's read that again, because these are things you need to know. We're not just making shit up. It says, passing to the next generation, such as the fifth Baron Rothschild inherited in 2024. All right, succession titles like the Baron Rothschild barony and roles within the family's financial institutions are transferred to designated successors. All right, continuing on. So that's what it's talking about when it says that they are full of children and leave the rest of their substance to their babies. Because you have to be a Baron Rothschild in order to inherit the Rothschilds, will of everything that they own. So now, let's go here. So I typed in Baron Rothschild meaning, right? Baron Rothschild refers to hereditary noble titles, right? It says, so in Austria, that's how you pronounce that. And then in Britain, it's Baron, right? Granted to members of the European Jewish Rothschild banking family, started in 1822. These titles recognize their immense wealth, influence, and philanthropic contributions to European society. All right, so there you go. If you want to pause the screen, you want to read this, you could do that. All right. So now let's just finish this up. So when you read Revelation 16 and 13, it also shows you how the earth is given into the hand of the wicked. Here's the proof. Revelation 16:13, and I saw 3 unclean frogs, like frogs, come out of the mouth of the dragon, right? We know the dragon was always synonymous with ancient Rome. We know that the dragon came back into rulership in the form of America and the EU, which makes up the beast system, right? And out of the mouth of the beast and out of the mouth of the false prophet, the beast being NATO and the EU, the false prophet being the Roman Catholic Church. Now, when it says I saw 3 unclean spirits, this is what it is referring to, all right? The 3 city-states, Washington, D.C., the city of London, and the Vatican City, right? So I'm just going to read this. 3 cities that don't belong to any nation but control the entire world. Because the scriptures say what? The earth is given into the hand of the wicked. So it says, these are not normal cities. Each of these 3 cities operates as a sovereign state within a state, immune to national laws, protected by symbolism, secrecy, and networks. Together they form an unholy trinity of modern empire. It says, they don't run the world, they run the system that run the world. Washington, D.C. runs NATO, the IMF, and the United Nations. London runs global debt chains. The Vatican influences schools, families, and elections through doctrines. They don't need to rule overtly. They rule the tools that shape reality. It says historical origins were never random. D.C. built on ancient Babylonian grid symbolism. The city of London tied to Knights Templar and royal banking cartels. Vatican built upon Roman Empire's last stronghold. This is not just power. This is an ancestral empire in disguise, referring to Esau-Edom. That's why you got to expose them, pursuing the 2 Thessalonians 2 and 8. Each city controls a core pillar. Washington, D.C. equal war. City of London equal wealth. The Vatican equal worship. So that's the 3 unclean frogs. Washington, D.C., the City of London, the Vatican. One commands nations, one controls the banks, one shapes your souls. They don't compete. They cooperate to rule silently. It says Washington, D.C. equals the military army, not part of any U.S. state, has its own flag, seal, and laws, built entirely on Freemasonic agriculture. This is where wars are launched, coups are planned, and regimes are changed. Pentagon equal war, capital equal policy, Federal Reserve equal control. The real capital of the world has 3 faces. They are unaccountable, untouchable, unquestionable Together, they've ruled the world longer than most government have existed. This is not a conspiracy. It's an architecture of global control. All right? So that's the three unclean frogs right there. So the Edomites, they wrote the shit, man. You will have to be stupid or just blinded to disagree with everything I just brought up. Lord willing, you was edified by the lesson. Shalom.